Zealoters, thank you for your love and support. I appreciate you all. France is on fire. The diplomatic mask has finally slipped in Paris, revealing a reality that many in the Sahel have known for years. In a historic and startling session within the French National Assembly, the very walls of power that once dictated terms to the continent are now echoing with the sounds of internal collapse and false transparency. France is not knowing peace. Not at all. The discussion taking place is not just about policy debate. It is a confession of the failure and the duplicity of French presence in West Africa. Please, if you haven't subscribed, subscribe. For decades, the narrative was built on the idea of partnership and security assistance. But as the leaders of the Sahel, Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso began to reclaim their sovereignty, the hidden layers of French operations were brought into the light. In this session, members of the French government and defense establishment are being forced to answer for the undeniable evidence of their shadow maneuvers. The central question being debated is no longer how to stay in Africa, but how they have been exposed and expelled. The gravity of the situation is captured in the images coming out of Paris. Tense faces, defensive postures, and a palpable sense of defeat. They are discussing the armed groups that they previously claimed to be fighting, but whose persistence and in some cases equipment can now be traced back to the very structure they maintained. The irony is sharp. While France once lectured a world of good governance in Africa, it is now the French state that is being scrutinized for its lack of accountability in the destabilizing chaos of the Sahel.
Giving a platform to the leader of a jihadist group that fights against French interests could legitimize this jihadist group leader, could contravene vital and strategic French interests, and could also weaken France's position in these countries, which is further challenged by Russian propaganda also spread by these jihadists. Don't you feel, in a way, that by giving a platform, by exposing the responses of this jihadist group leader, you are weakening France's interests in these countries?
I repeat, it was not an opinion piece, since it was an analysis lasting 3 or 4 minutes that was recontextualized. Moreover, on the airwaves of France 24, and it was mentioned in this article, I encourage you to listen to it, where we talk about the atrocities of the jihadists. We regularly talk about it on the airwaves of France 24, and he also mentioned it in his article. The jihadist is not portrayed as a positive character doing fantastic things in the Sahel. It's quite the opposite. We remind daily on our channels of the atrocities committed by jihadists, which also pose a problem today for the current governments in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. While the French have left, the Russians visibly are also having a lot of trouble pushing back the jihadists in the area, and we remind this every day on the France 24 channels. I repeat, it was not a platform. Really, I insist on that.
I thank you for your response. If I insist on this point, is also because this journalist from France 24, Mr. Wassim Nasser, specialist in jihadist movements, regularly communicates with terrorist groups, among which he has, as you mentioned, a certain number of sources. He often does not hesitate to compare the version of these terrorist groups with that of the French army, thus putting them in a way on an equal footing, as if they were two equally legitimate sources. And that is, I find, the heart of the problem. It is to institutionalize a terrorist and jihadist narrative at the same level as an official narrative, a narrative of the regular French army that defends our interests. On January 3rd, 2021, let me give you another example. The French army carried out a significant airstrike north of the village of Bounti in Mali against jihadist forces. An NGO then accused the French army of committing a blunder by striking a wedding when the jihadists were no longer there. And the journalist from France 24, the same Mr. Wassim Nasr, goes to the site, and on February 2nd, 2021, after citing the version of the French army, he contrasts it with that of the jihadist forces. I will quote his words on the microphone of France 24. I quote, "On January 8th, I received confirmation from the jihadists that they were present at the location on the same day, but in the morning." End of quote.
You see, it's a version that undermines the version of the French army, that also undermines a certain amount of intelligence that the French army might gather.
How do you explain, once again, this is another example, that France 24 is funded by our taxes to give a platform to jihadist groups, asking them for their version of events on an important, strategic and crucial military operation conducted by the French army?
Is it the purpose of the taxes we pay to muddy the waters and go against the interests of the French army in such a critical operation?
Mr. Rapporteur, there are things that I do not know exactly what the rules of confidentiality are or not, which I would be happy to send to you in writing if you would like, and which I think would be inappropriate to disclose here. And I can tell you that we are in very regular contact with the French Army General Staff, particularly its component that operates in Africa. So, but if you like, I will answer all that in detail in writing or orally, okay?
I thank you. Indeed, I will be very interested. I also understand the confidential nature, and I would be delighted to have these elements in writing. And one last point on this subject, if I say this, it shocked me as a French citizen. I don't have access to the same information as you, but I see, for example, that there was a statement from the French army following this article and report, which explains that it did indeed strike the jihadists, even if the jihadists refute this claim. The version of the French army is that on January 7th, the Malian armed forces claimed that jihadists had been targeted, a version corroborated by the French General Staff, which mentioned surveillance with drones and the exact locations of the strikes.
In a stark contrast, the image of African leadership is shifting. While Paris debates its lost influence, the leaders of the AES are standing on the front line of a new reality. They are not waiting for permission from the Élysée Palace. They are acting with a clear mandate from their people to prioritize sovereignty, unity, and work. The salutes of the Malian and the Burkinabe commanders are not just military gestures. They are signals to the world that the age of the backyard is over. The age of the backyard is over. This is the frontline narrative of 2026. The shift is permanent. And as Paris scrambles to make sense of its strategic failure, the people of the Sahel are moving forward with a vision of self-determination. The dots are finally being connected. The destabilization was never an accident. It was an instrument of control. But when they came prepared, they met Africa prepared. But as these discussions in Paris prove, that instrument has been broken. The land of upright men and its neighbors have spoken, and the echo of their resolve is now shaking the very foundation of those who sought to hold them back. The era of silence is gone. The era of African truth has arrived. And in all these, we cannot find African Union. We cannot find the leaders who are pushing for slavery to be a crime. Because even in this our present day, we are still seeing how they want to impose slavery on us forcefully. Yet, the leaders who sing Pan-Africanism, the leaders we hail and love, are nowhere to be found. To the point that these people are sitting in their parliament, discussing this issue, admitting and proving to the whole world that they are the ones responsible for this chaos. The same people who preach human rights, the same people who preach equality, the same people who claim they love the African and they are here to protect us. I hope we are learning. I hope we are seeing these people for who they are. They can no longer hide it. And the African must wake up, especially our leaders who still believe in these people. signing security pacts with them. And when they finish, they're the same people singing Pan-African song to us. They're the same people who tell us how African Union is and fit for purpose. And that is the reason to which they're making sure the job they've given to them to keep their gate locked, which is democracy, is what they always sing wherever they get the opportunity to meet. The time has come for us all to unite and for us all to see what is happening in Mali to be the problem of the African. We have risen and nothing is turning us back. We are the only ones that can set ourselves free. United we stand, divided we fall, and united we keep standing forever and ever. The greatest enemy of the African is mental slavery. So let's decolonize ourselves from mental slavery. Let's keep sharing to educate our brothers and sisters. Together we'll make Africa great for ourselves and the next generations that are going to come. So that's the latest around the world, in Europe, and in France.